The potential for the human brain to maintain clarity and resilience well into the later decades of life is far greater than cultural stereotypes suggest. A prevailing misconception assumes that cognitive decline is an inevitable slide, causing many to view their daily habits as mere coping mechanisms rather than powerful tools for preservation. This fatalistic view often leads to the misuse of stimulants, turning a potential neuroprotective ally into a source of anxiety and depletion. By shifting the approach from mindless consumption to a deliberate practice grounded in awareness, the daily ritual of coffee can be transformed into a sophisticated cognitive shield. The perspective of John Kabat-Zinn suggests that the quality of attention brought to an action changes the biological impact of that action, turning a simple routine into a cornerstone of neural health. What follows is a structured exploration of how to align this common habit with the principles of mindfulness and physiological wisdom to support longevity, focus, and emotional balance. The neurochemistry of mindful awareness, the relationship between caffeine and the aging brain, is complex, governed by delicate chemical balances that shift as the body matures. In the typical rush of modern life, coffee is often consumed as a rapid-fire solution to fatigue, a biological loan taken out against future energy. However, when viewed through the lens of mindfulness, the chemical interaction becomes a subject of careful observation rather than desperate necessity. Caffeine functions primarily by blocking adenosine receptors, the neural sites responsible for signaling tiredness to the system. For a person over 60, whose homeostatic recovery processes may be slower, the indiscriminate blocking of these signals can mask deep exhaustion rather than resolving it. A mindful approach requires the individual to assess their true state of fatigue before ingestion, ensuring that the stimulant acts as an enhancer of clarity rather than a mask for depletion. When coffee is consumed with the specific intent of fostering presence, it interacts differently with the body's stress response systems. Mindless drinking often occurs alongside multitasking or rushing, which spikes cortisol levels and compounds the jittery effects of caffeine. This sympathetic nervous system activation can be detrimental to the aging brain, which is already more sensitive to the neurotoxic effects of chronic stress hormones. By applying the principles of mindfulness-based stress reduction, the individual approaches the cup in a state of stillness, lowering the baseline of physical tension before the caffeine even enters the bloodstream. This preparation allows the stimulant to work on a calmer physiological platform, promoting focus without triggering the fight-or-flight mechanisms that damage memory centers over time. The mechanism of action extends beyond simple alertness. It involves the modulation of blood flow and metabolic activity within the brain. Caffeine, when not overused, acts as a mild vasoconstrictor, which can help manage headaches and improve concentration. However, the benefits are lost if the dosage exceeds the liver's ability to process it, a capacity that naturally diminishes with age. The mindful drinker observes the subtle shifts in their own physiology, noticing the precise moment when clarity turns into agitation. This self-regulation is critical as it prevents the oxidative stress associated with excitotoxicity, where neurons are overstimulated to the point of damage. The practice of tuning into somatic signals protects the brain from the very substance meant to aid it. A specific scenario illustrates this shift from consumption to communion with the moment. Instead of drinking coffee while scrolling through alarming news feeds or rushing to an appointment, the individual sits quietly for the first few sips. They direct their attention to the physical sensation of the cup and the internal feeling of the liquid. This simple act of single-tasking reduces the cognitive load on the prefrontal cortex, which is often overburdened in older adults trying to manage complex environments. It creates a micro-session of meditation, leveraging the coffee break as a tool for grounding. The pause allows the brain to reset, clearing the mental workspace and reducing the background noise of anxiety. There are, of course, limitations to this chemical intervention, particularly for those with specific genetic variations or heart conditions. For some individuals, even small amounts of caffeine can trigger arrhythmias or severe insomnia, which are counterproductive to brain health. In such cases, The ritual must be adapted, perhaps using decaffeinated options to maintain the behavioral anchor without the stimulant. The wisdom lies in recognizing that the chemical is secondary to the quality of presence. The neuroprotective benefits of the pause can exist independently of the caffeine molecule. It is the cessation of rushing that provides the true medicine for the aging mind. The digestive system also plays a crucial role in how caffeine affects the brain, mediated by the gut-brain axis. As digestion slows with age, the absorption rate of compounds changes, making the timing of consumption more impactful. A stomach that is unsettled or highly acidic can send distress signals to the brain via the vagus nerve, interpreting the coffee as a stressor. Mindful consumption involves awareness of the gut's readiness, often preceded by water or food to buffer the acidity. This respect for the body's internal environment ensures that the brain receives a steady supply of fuel rather than a chaotic spike of chemicals. This careful orchestration of biology and attention serves to protect the hippocampus, the brain region most critical for memory and most vulnerable to stress. High cortisol levels, often exacerbated by caffeine-induced anxiety, can lead to atrophy in this vital area. By coupling caffeine intake with a deliberate relaxation response, the individual mitigates the cortisol spike, allowing the neuroprotective antioxidants in coffee to do their work without the accompanying stress toxicity. The ritual becomes a way to signal safety to the brain, creating an environment where neurons can thrive rather than merely survive. Ultimately, the goal is to move from a relationship of dependency to one of intentionality. The person stops using coffee to force the body into submission and starts using it to facilitate a state of alert calm. This shift in attitude changes the neural signature of the habit, turning a daily routine into a practice of self-care. It acknowledges that the aging brain requires gentle support, not aggressive stimulation. The mind is invited to wake up, not forced to snap to attention. Am I drinking this to wake up or to avoid feeling how tired I truly am? Sensory anchoring and cognitive stimulation, the act of preparing and consuming coffee, offers a rich tapestry of sensory inputs that can be utilized as a form of cognitive training. In the philosophy of mindfulness, the mundane is the gateway to the profound, and for the aging brain, sensory engagement is a critical component of neuroplasticity. The olfactory bulb, responsible for the sense of smell, has a direct hardwired connection to the hippocampus and the amygdala, the centers of memory and emotion. When an individual takes the time to deeply inhale the aroma of fresh coffee, they are stimulating these neural pathways, keeping the circuits of memory active and robust. This is not merely poetic. It is a physiological exercise that combats the sensory dulling often associated with aging. Engaging with the temperature and texture of the drink requires a level of cortical processing that pulls the mind out of autopilot. Much of adult life is spent in a default mode network, a state of wandering thought that can lead to rumination and unhappiness. By focusing intensely on the heat radiating from the mug or the specific flavor notes on the tongue, the individual forces the brain to switch networks. This toggle between the wandering mind and the focused mind is like a push-up for the brain's attention systems. For someone over 60, preserving the ability to direct attention at will is a key factor in maintaining executive function and independence. The preparation process itself can be transformed into a moving meditation, akin to the slow, deliberate actions found in formal mindfulness practices. Grinding beans, pouring water, and watching the steam rise involves fine motor skills and sequential planning. Performing these actions with total awareness, rather than hurriedly while thinking about the next task, recruits multiple brain regions simultaneously. This integration of motor control, sensory processing, and executive planning strengthens the synaptic connections that coordinate complex behavior. It turns the kitchen counter into a dojo for the mind, where the discipline is simple awareness of the unfolding present. A powerful application of this principle involves the beginner's mind, a concept central to Kabat-Zinn's teachings. The individual attempts to experience the cup of coffee as if it were the very first time they had ever encountered it. They drop all past associations and expectations, exploring the nuance of the taste and the feeling of swallowing with fresh curiosity. This disruption of habit loops is essential for neurogenesis, the creation of new neurons. The aging brain thrives on novelty, and by finding novelty in a repetitive daily act, the person generates a consistent stimulus for growth without needing to seek external excitement. There's a profound emotional component to this sensory anchoring as well. Anxiety and worry about the future are common companions of aging, centered on health concerns or loss. These emotions reside in the future, whereas sensory experience resides strictly in the present. One cannot smell coffee in the future. One can only smell it now. By anchoring the mind in the sensory reality of the immediate moment, the individual finds a temporary refuge from future-based anxieties. This reduction in chronic psychological stress lowers the inflammatory markers in the body, which are known contributors to cognitive decline and dementia. However, this practice requires a deliberate withdrawal from the distractions that usually accompany the morning routine. If the television is blaring or the newspaper is being read simultaneously, the brain is forced to filter out the sensory details of the coffee, dulling the experience. The neuroprotective benefit is diluted by divided attention. To truly utilize coffee as cognitive training, the environment must support the focus. This might mean 5 minutes of silence in the kitchen, a small boundary set against the intrusion of the world, protecting the brain's processing power for a dedicated period. The texture and warmth of the liquid also serve as a somatic grounding tool. As people age, proprioception, the sense of body position, can diminish, leading to a feeling of disconnection from the physical self. Feeling the warmth travel down the esophagus and settle in the stomach provides a strong internal signal of the body's existence. It centers the consciousness in the physical form, promoting a sense of embodiment that is stabilizing and reassuring. This internal sensing, or interoception, is linked to emotional regulation and self-awareness, faculties that must be maintained for emotional resilience. The ritual serves as a daily calibration point. If the coffee tastes bitter or flat, or if the person is too distracted to taste it at all, it serves as a diagnostic tool for their mental state. It signals that the mind has drifted or that stress is blocking sensory reception. Recognizing this disconnect allows the individual to correct course, taking a few deep breaths to return to the here and now. The coffee becomes a mirror, reflecting the quality of one's presence back to the observer. Where's my mind right now? And what does this moment actually taste like? Chronobiology and the art of timing, the biological timing of caffeine intake, is as critical as the substance itself, particularly when considering the circadian rhythms of the older adult. The body operates on a precise internal clock that regulates hormone secretion, body temperature, and alertness. Upon waking, the human body naturally experiences a surge in cortisol, known as the cortisol awakening response. This spike is designed to mobilize energy and transition the brain from sleep to wakefulness. Introducing caffeine immediately during this peak is often redundant and can lead to the development of tolerance, where the body stops producing its own wakefulness signals efficiently. For the aging system, preserving the natural hormonal rhythm is essential for maintaining sleep quality and energy stability. A strategic approach suggests waiting at least 90 minutes after waking before consuming the first cup. This delay allows the natural cortisol levels to rise and begin to taper off, creating a pharmacological window where caffeine is most effective. By working with the body's chemistry rather than overriding it, the individual avoids the mid-morning crash that often follows an immediate caffeine spike. This practice of delayed gratification also serves as a mental discipline, reinforcing the idea that the drug is a tool to be used wisely, not a compulsive reflex to the sensation of grogginess. Hydration is a critical precursor to this delayed coffee ritual. The brain loses significant moisture during sleep, and dehydration is a leading cause of cognitive fog and confusion in seniors. Consuming a diuretic like coffee before rehydrating exacerbates this deficit, shrinking brain tissue volume and impairing synaptic function. A mindful protocol insists on a full glass of water before any coffee is touched. This simple rule prioritizes the brain's structural needs over its chemical cravings, ensuring that the neural environment is optimal for transmission before the stimulant is introduced. The half-life of caffeine changes as metabolism slows, meaning the drug stays in the system significantly longer in a 60-year-old than in a 20-year-old. While a young person might clear a cup of coffee in 4 hours, an older adult might require 8 or more. This extended duration poses a severe threat to sleep architecture, specifically deep slow-wave sleep, which is crucial for clearing beta-amyloid plaques, the proteins associated with Alzheimer's disease. To protect the brain's nightly cleaning cycle, the cutoff time for caffeine must be ruthlessly observed, often as early as noon. This boundary is a protective wall built around the night, acknowledging that sleep is the primary neuroprotective strategy. An applied scenario for this timing involves the mid-morning pause. Instead of drinking coffee at 7 a.m. with breakfast, the individual waits until 10 a.m., when natural alertness begins to dip. This turns the coffee break into a distinct event, separate from the meal, allowing for the mindfulness practices discussed earlier. It provides a bridge of energy that carries the person through to lunch without the jitteriness of a cortisol caffeine collision. This strategic placement maximizes the cognitive boost while minimizing the physiological cost, a trade-off that becomes increasingly important with age. Variations in liver enzyme function, specifically the CYP1A2 enzyme, dictate how quickly an individual metabolizes caffeine. Some people are slow metabolizers genetically, and for them, even 1 cup can induce prolonged anxiety and high blood pressure. As one ages, these genetic predispositions can be amplified by other medications or health conditions. A mindful approach involves strict self-observation to determine one's personal metabolic category. If coffee causes tremors or racing thoughts hours later, the dosage must be adjusted regardless of what cultural norms suggest. Listening to the body's feedback loop is the ultimate guide to dosage. The concept of microdosing caffeine can also be effective for the aging brain. Rather than consuming a large 16-ounce mug, which delivers a massive hit to the central nervous system, smaller, more frequent amounts can provide a steady state of alertness. However, this must be balanced against the noon cutoff. A smaller cup allows for the enjoyment of the ritual and the antioxidant benefits without overwhelming the adrenal glands. This moderation reflects a relationship of respect with the substance, acknowledging that more is not always better, especially when the goal is sustained cognitive endurance. Ultimately, the timing of the habit reflects a broader respect for the cycles of day and night. It acknowledges that the body is not a machine that can be forced into high gear at any moment, but a biological organism with rhythmic needs. By aligning caffeine consumption with these natural tides, the individual harmonizes their lifestyle with their biology. The coffee becomes a support to the rhythm, rather than a disruptor of it. Does my current routine support my natural energy, or try to artificially override it? Integrating the ritual for longevity. The journey toward protecting the brain and memory after 60 is not about finding a magic pill, but about cultivating a lifestyle of conscious engagement. Coffee, in this context, transcends its role as a mere beverage and becomes a focal point for a broader practice of living. The antioxidants found in the bean, such as chlorogenic acid, offer significant anti-inflammatory benefits that protect neurons from degeneration. However, these chemical compounds are most effective when they enter a body that is not in a state of chronic stress. The synthesis of the chemical benefit and the behavioral benefit creates a compound effect, where the sum is greater than the parts. By integrating the principles of mindfulness into this daily act, the individual trains the mind to return to the present moment repeatedly. This repetition is the essence of neuroplasticity. Every time the person catches their mind wandering and brings it back to the scent or taste of the coffee, they're strengthening the neural networks responsible for focus and emotional regulation. Over months and years, this seemingly small discipline builds a cognitive reserve, a buffer of neural connectivity that can withstand the natural wear and tear of aging. It is a daily deposit into the bank account of mental health. The ritual also serves as a declaration of self-worth. Taking the time to prepare and enjoy coffee without rushing sends a message to the self that one's peace of mind is a priority. In a culture that often dismisses the elderly or expects them to fade into the background, maintaining a vibrant, sensory-rich, and disciplined morning routine is an act of vitality. It claims space and time for the self, asserting that the later years are a time for savoring, not just surviving. This psychological stance is protective against depression, which is a known risk factor for memory loss. Furthermore, the consistency of the ritual provides a comforting structure to the day. As external roles change, retirement, empty nesting, changes in mobility, internal structures become vital for mental stability. The predictable, comforting sequence of boiling water, brewing, and tasting provides a reliable anchor point. It is a constant in a changing world, a familiar friend that offers warmth and clarity. This predictability lowers the background anxiety of the brain, freeing up resources for creative thought and social engagement. The cumulative effect of these practices, timing, sensory engagement, and mindful awareness, is a brain that is calmer, more alert, and better protected against oxidative stress. The coffee bean provides the raw materials, but the mind provides the architecture. It is a partnership between nature's chemistry and human consciousness. The profound realization is that the power to protect the brain lies not in the cup alone, but in the hand that holds it and the mind that perceives it. In the end, the path to longevity is paved with these small, intentional moments. The master of the ritual is not the one who drinks the most expensive blend, but the one who is most fully awake to the experience of drinking it. To age with energy is to remain curious, present, and kind to oneself, one cup at a time. The simple act of drinking coffee becomes a daily meditation on being alive. What intention am I pouring into this cup alongside the water and the beans?